Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don NEUEN. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glares. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
We are here today, however, to demand the resignation of Senator Al Franken and Representative John Conyers. Whether you have a Republican or Democrat after your name, it does not matter. We are here in the name of sexual harassment and sexual abuse, and we are here to say that it is simply unacceptable. Now, according to CNN, almost all of Mr. Conyers' former staffers have seen the congressman in his underwear. Think about that for a moment, folks. Captain Underpants and his tidy whities parading before almost all of his female staffers. Is that what we expect of a United States congressman? Al Franken harassed and tried to intimidate me 17 years ago, stalking me until I threatened to call the police. I came forward with my story after KBC anchorwoman Leanne Tweeden shared details of his groping. She had photographic evidence, and yet within hours of the news cycle, she was being intimidated and called names, and it was very ugly. We're also here today to demand that the secret slush fund that has been paying out for over $17 million, that has to stop. There is never again going to be a single dime of taxpayer money used to cover up sexual harassment by any congressman or United States senator or any sort of predation that should take place in the halls of Congress. Joining us in these demands are women whose stories came to light in the 1990s during the impeachment of William Jefferson Clinton. After almost 25 years, we are going to square this circle for you. We are going to expose the enablers who allowed this hideous behavior in Congress and in our White House to take place, and that is today still taking place. Now, today, I want to challenge former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and all other feminist leaders to look these women in the eyes. Juanita, Kathleen, Leslie, who have joined us today. We challenge Nancy Pelosi to tell them that they don't believe their stories after all these years. We also want to remind you that feminist leader Gloria Steinem once said of Bill Clinton in 1998, "Every man is entitled to one free grope." In 2017, is this really the legacy that we want to leave for our children? I'd like to introduce to you my partner at the Media Equality Project, Brian Maloney.
Thank you, Melanie. It's a question many have asked. Why bring Bill Clinton's victims to an event denouncing Senator Al Franken, Representative John Conyers, and others? Yet who could possibly understand the issue better than those who have endured the full force of a media and political establishment that will stop at nothing to protect corrupt friends and punish their accusers? Women like Juanita Broaddrick, Kathleen Willey, Leslie Millwee, Paula Jones, and others know what it's like to go up against a brutal, vindictive machine. It's the same machine now running interference for Senator Al Franken and attacking his accusers, even though he was caught in the act groping a sleeping woman on a plane. From writing a sickening column for Playboy called Pornorama, where he joked about his then 12-year-old son writing a school paper on bestiality, to being paid with taxpayer funds stolen from a New York charity to fund his failed liberal radio network called Air America, and a questionable 2008 election victory, Franken has been an embarrassment for years. Now it's time for him to go. As the only male behind the podium today, a couple of observations. When men in positions of power abuse it in a way that harms women, it reflects poorly on all of us. Yesterday, at a private dinner, the women you see here today told us their stories, and I realized just how chilling the truth is in a way that television can never truly portray. There's so much more that we've never heard even now. As for Congress, when men not in elective office are accused of sexual harassment, there is no taxpayer-funded slush fund standing by, ready to take care of the problem. Never have we seen our representatives become so thoroughly out of touch with America itself. It is outrageous that such a secret fund exists in the first place. We must know what payouts have occurred and why. Names must be named, regardless of party affiliation. Joining me now is Blanquita Collum, former governor of the Broadcasting Board of Governors and a longtime talk show host, who has teamed up today with the Media Equality Project to demand the resignations of Al Frankenhugger and Captain Underpants. Thank you, Blanquita.
And also, I'm very grateful to Melanie and to you, dear Brian. Thank you very much, and to these brave women. But let's just talk about the responsibility of the halls of power of these members of Congress. First and foremost, they have to remember one thing as we request the list. They have forgotten a very basic thing. They work for us. We paid for it. They have the obligation to tell the American people who is on that list. Now, I want to refresh your memory on some terrible incidences that we've had in not too recent past. Many of you were here back in 1989 when a colleague of mine, a very good friend of many of us, the late Paul Rodriguez, broke the homosexual prostitution ring. Then later in 1992, many of you remember the House banking scandal. All of the people that were using the banking facilities in the House and kiting checks, etc. Many of those people are still in Congress. So I went to look and find out a little bit about this fund, as much as I could get. And I'm really going to demand that the press also meet the standard to go out there and find out what's going on. 1995, the Congressional Accountability Act was designed to give Capitol Hill workers the same kind of rights on health and safety, non-discrimination, as other workers in the United States. However, it was not designed to protect errant members of Congress. There is a confidentiality clause that has a compensation award, but it was not meant for the members. So what is our obligation here to future generations? People serve the American people they asked to go to Congress. They took an oath and they promised they were going to serve with integrity. We are demanding, we are requesting, we are saying, show us the list. You have an obligation to the American people. If you've made a mistake on the People's Watch, then you need to step down and resign. You took an oath to do the job, and we want to know who you are. We can't operate in the dark. We can't operate in the dark, and just because we say, well, I'm sorry, you got caught with your hand in the cookie jar, it's not enough. So I want to just say a couple of quick more things. To any of the lawmakers that fight to stop the release of the records, because many of these members of Congress we invited to stand with us here, and they basically patted us on the head and said, have a good press conference. Gee, girls, do a good job, right? They didn't show up. Do you see one member here? Well, I want to know if they have any kind of hesitation to release those records. Then what are they fearful? What are they worried about? What's the truth that they are afraid to uncover? As Melanie and Brian have said, we don't care so much about whether it's the politics of the right versus the left. You know what it is, folks? It's the politics of the right versus the wrong. And if we don't give this back to our future generations, if we don't stop this evil now, it will get embedded even deeper within the Congress, and it will become a cancer that we can't get rid of. And finally, I want to challenge those members of the press, including groups like the Women of the View. You owe these women an apology. How dare you say just hateful things about them? You need to say that you are sorry for that kind of thing. You know, it goes back to the foundation of any religion, any basic principle. It's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. These women were very brave, and shame on you for being so hideous and unkind to them.
Thank you, Blanquita. By the way, we do have copies of the invitations that we've sent to all members of Congress and Senate, inviting them to participate and to denounce the slush fund and to denounce the treatment of women who have been sexually harassed, whether it is from Matt Lauer or any other person, especially John Conyers and Al Franken. Joining us right now is a woman I just had an opportunity to meet last night for the very first time, and her story absolutely is shocking because most of America has never heard details of what happened to her. I'd like to introduce you to Leslie Millwee. She is a former television news reporter from Fort Smith, Arkansas. Leslie, was sexually harassed by Bill Clinton 3 times. Assaulted would probably be the best word to use to describe what happened to her, and now she's going to share her story for all of you. Thank you, Leslie.
Hi, everyone. Leslie Millwee. Thanks, Melanie and Brian, so much for giving me a voice. I told my story for the first time to Breitbart News last, I believe the story went public October 19th of 2016. And everybody said, this happened to you in 1980. Why are you just now coming out? There were a variety of reasons, but the main reason is I couldn't bear the thought of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton being in the White House. And I thought if I can just tell my story and one person can understand and see the gravity of what I'm talking about, it will have been worth it for all the grief that you take and putting yourself out there on the line. I was a 19-year-old, very naive, very excited TV reporter. I got my first job in Fort Smith, Fayetteville, Arkansas. In 1980, I don't know, most of you are too young to remember, but there was the Cuban flotilla. Castro emptied all of his prisons, and hundreds of thousands of Cubans came over. Fort Chaffee, which is right outside of Fort Smith, became a 25,000-person city almost overnight. Needless to say, the people of Arkansas were so distressed that this had happened. Governor Clinton, in his first term, spent a lot of time both at Fort Chaffee and at our TV station he used as his base of operation. I noticed for the first time that he took a special interest in me when Chelsea was actually 2 weeks old. He came up behind me and started rubbing my shoulders. He would always refer to me as pretty girl and follow me around the station. It was kind of a joke for my news director and my cameraman. He said, "Oh, I think this guy likes you." So I did my best to avoid him, but unfortunately I was forced to interview him and spend a lot of time with him. The first assault happened in the summer of 1980. I went into a very, very small editing room, and it was so small there was only room for a chair, and the editing equipment was right in front of me, and the door was right behind that. He came in behind me, he pressed his genitals to my neck, and started running his hands from behind down into my breasts. I'm asking him the whole time to please stop. I do not want this. This is not right. You are married. You're the governor. Please leave me alone. He laughed and left. I followed him back outside where his highway patrolman car was waiting, and I said, "Do not ever do that to me again. I do not deserve that, and I will not tolerate it." I debated then whether to tell my news director, but I'm 20 years old. I'm in a strange city, and I'm just starting my career. Is that really what I want to do? I became so terrified over the next couple of months that my grandmother, who lived several hours away in another state, came to live with me. She was my sounding board, and she was very old school. She said, "You know, honey, nothing good is going to come out of this by coming forward and telling him about this." He continued to harass me. He did things like, I had a notebook with my name written on it. He came up and wrote Clinton on top of my name. I said, "What, are you giving me your autograph now?" He said, "No, I want you to see how good Clinton looks on top of Leslie." This was the kind of stuff that I had to deal with on a daily basis. Kisses on the neck, just followed me around. I was just about at the end of my rope. He came into the editing room soon after that. This time, it escalated. I didn't realize he had followed me in the room. He put his genitals against my neck, and he humped me to the point of orgasm. I'm screaming and asking him to stop. I'm crying. He finishes what he's doing and walks out. I was so distraught, I went home to my grandmother and I said, "What do I do?" The next day, I had another breaking story at Fort Chaffee. There had been a riot. I was trying my best to get my story to air. He was not in the building. I knew he was in Fort Smith, but he was not there. So I hear the door open behind me and realize that I'm being hurried along. My story, that was before live feeds, and we had to get our story to air at 6 o'clock. I feel him kiss my neck and say, "I'm here." And I realize that he's there to sexually assault me yet again. He did the same thing he did the second time, and I was just absolutely mortified. I froze. I sat there for a minute, and then I rushed to the bathroom. There was a local TV personality there that worked at our station that said, "Honey, what is wrong?" I didn't tell her, but I did go home and I told my grandmother what happened. She said, "We've got to get you out of here. You cannot do this. We do not know what this man is going to do. No one's going to believe you. He's the governor, and you're a 20-year-old TV reporter. This may change the course of your life and who you are, but this is the reality of the situation." The next day I went in to quit, and I quit my job. It changed the course of my life and who I was. And, you know, looking back, I had a wonderful life. I'm very lucky. I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor. And I'm sad that this man has never, ever acknowledged or had any accountability of what he's done or admitted it. I was invited after the Breitbart newscast to go to the debate last year, and I was escorted away by Secret Service so I wouldn't be anywhere near Bill Clinton. I found that quite ironic. So I, too, want to call for the resignation of Al Franken and John Conyers, and all of these people need to be made public, who they are and what they do. I'm tired of paying for it as a taxpayer. I'm tired of paying Bill Clinton's pension for what he did to me and all of these other women. I know there are many, many more like me. He knocked on my door that last night I was there and tried to get me to open the door. And by the grace of God, my grandmother was there and helped me. But I want other women that have been through anything like this, whether it was with Bill Clinton or anyone, I want you to come forward, stand up, don't be embarrassed, don't be ashamed. Tell the world about this so that we can make these men and some women accountable for their abuse of other people. It's not acceptable. Thank you.
Really brave women. Because imagine that. You're right about that, Leslie. Because when men or women cover up, they hurt everyone. And I've gotten to know over the years of one of my very favorite people because she's incredibly strong. Back in 1978, she'll tell you her story back in Arkansas. Many of you have heard it at the nursing home that she owned. Juanita Broaddrick was raped by Bill Clinton, and she's going to share the story with you and why she thinks it's incredibly important for those people who have abused women or men to go, such as Senator Al Franken and John Conyers. Juanita?
Thank you, Blanquita. That's very nice. My message will be more brief this morning. We have to sort of cut our comments short. But I think it was so important for you to hear what you heard from Leslie. I've been out there, and I've been able to tell my story. Leslie has not. I'm here to support the Media Equality Project in their efforts to support victims of sexual abuse. Many of you may have already heard this, or you may have seen it on my Twitter account. I was 35 years old when Bill Clinton, the Arkansas Attorney General, raped me, and Hillary Clinton tried to silence me. I'm now 74, and it never goes away. For the last 2 decades, I was harassed and ridiculed by the media, and that doesn't go away either. But we're fortunate. It's a different time now. Women are now feeling that they can come forward with these accusations and what happened to them, regardless of who's being accused. For decades, we were told boys will be boys. Just deal with it. Women had no faith that they would be believed or much less taken seriously. As a result, most said nothing or they denied it like I did. This was out of fear of embarrassment, out of fear of retribution, and the simple fact that they knew nothing would be done about it. Today, these allegations are being brought to a whole new playing field. It's more level now. They are no longer being swept under the rug, never to see the light of day. We are entering a whole new era in regards to allegations of unwanted sexual contact. Many of you may know that a few weeks ago, Jake Tapper made a comment about the treatment of the women's allegations against Bill Clinton. Jake said. There's something to be said about how society has evolved. But in addition, it's hard not to look back at that period and think, you know what? The media treated those women poorly. Poorly is not my adjective, but we won't say that. Our society is evolving for the better. Those days of boys will be boys, just deal with it, are gone. We don't ever want to go back to that time. I know because I lived it. We no longer have to deal with it. We no longer have to live with it. It's a good day. It's time to move forward, and it's time for everyone to do the right thing. Thank you.
Just reminded me, as Juanita was speaking, the reason the left-wing organization MoveOn.org was formed was because they wanted the country to move past all the misdeeds of Bill Clinton. Clearly, we still have not yet to do that. I want to introduce now Terry Beatley. She's a conservative activist from Florida. She has been looking at the current legislation now before Congress, sponsored by Republican Congresswoman Barbara Comstock, who, by the way, refused to join us today in this news conference. Here's a copy of the invitation that we sent to the Congresswoman. And Terry has been kind enough to go through and grade for us the legislation and what it means and whether or not it will even be effective. Terry, welcome.
So here we have the perfect example of the D.C. swamp. A congressional committee pays off the victims of congressional sexual abuse with taxpayer hush money and then blocks the public's knowledge of the abuse. This cover-up scheme is preposterous and unjust. It allows Congress to keep the voting public uninformed so the abusers can get reelected over and over again. It's as sick as the Weinstein problem in Hollywood. As American women, we won't put up with this disgrace anymore, and it's game over. When I learned about this, what I call the Sexual Predator Payoff Reelection Fund, I wanted to know what committee's in charge of doling out our hard-earned money through tax dollars for such corrupt purposes. I made the assumption that it would probably be an all-male committee, but no. I discovered that Virginia Congresswoman Barbara Comstock was appointed to the House Committee on Administration when she arrived in D.C. in 2015. Comstock has overseen 36 different taxpayer money settlements protecting the anonymity of the perpetrators. These taxpayer-funded settlements ultimately silence the voices of the victims due to the convenient non-disclosure clause. Media, let's get Barbara Comstock's record straight. $2 million tax dollars have been paid out to victims under her watch. That averages over $55,000 per settlement for just these 36 cases. Not once, and I repeat, not one time has Barbara Comstock called for a bill to stop this practice of covering up congressional sexual abuse until just last week, when the corrupt practice was exposed. Now Barbara Comstock claims that she's for transparency, and she's now peddling a bill to prevent this practice in the future. Ms. Comstock, I got a message for you. Don't bother wasting your D.C. breath claiming settlements are protected under non-disclosure. You serve on the committee that makes the policies, which can change the policies. She must think American women are just plain too stupid to see through the recent and all too convenient concern. So that's why there's a new Twitter hashtag for all Americans to send just to Barbara Comstock. Hashtag Come Clean Comstock, if you can. I have a message for her. The women at this press conference represent women across America. Comstock, we see through your fraudulent outrage, and we demand accountability and justice. We demand the list of names of sexual abusers. You also need to tell us your role in all 36 of these settlements. Comstock, you're privy to the names and the details of all the cases. We simply want to know, what did Comstock know? When did she know it? And lastly, why did she do nothing while victims suffered the consequences of a slush fund designed to protect the abusers and then silence, at taxpayer expense, the victims? America, demand the list of congressional names protected by Comstock's committee, and we expect you to do it now. Thank you.
It's hard to imagine when I talked about the full force of a media and political establishment and that machine that exists and how cruel and vindictive it can truly be. A person who has endured that more than our next speaker. Kathleen Willey is someone who has been admired by millions of Americans for her courage and strength through everything that she has suffered through, and we are so pleased to have Kathleen here today.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Willey. My story has been heard time and time again, so I really won't go into the details of what happened. I was sexually harassed by President Clinton in 1993. I was a volunteer at the First Lady's social office, and my husband was in serious financial trouble, and I had no problems going to the president and asking him for help getting a job, because he was a friend of ours, and we had raised a lot of money and worked hard in his campaign. I was backed into a corner. I was fondled, groped. He forced himself on me. I did everything I could to get away, and for the grace of God, one of his assistants banged on the door for the second time and told him they had a meeting waiting, and at that, I took that moment to escape. But the reason that I am here, I'm honored to be here. I want to thank Blanquita and Brian and Melanie and Terry and Jean for all of your hard work that you're putting this together on such short notice. We really appreciate you giving us a voice. I am here to demand the resignation of Al Franken and John Conyers. They are not sorry. Their apologies are weak. The only reason they apologized is because they were caught. They had no intention of changing. It's in their DNA, and it's not going to change. They need to resign. And the other thing that I would like to ask, and find one decent, sensitive man or woman who thinks that women are valuable, to pass a resolution in the Congress to strip Bill and Hillary Clinton of their pensions. Bill Clinton is a rapist, and Hillary Clinton is his enabler. And it was her secret police that terrorized me, absolutely terrorized me for 2 years during this whole thing. Her secret police killed my pets. They tried to get my pets out of a kennel when I went out of town. They were following me. They knew where I was. God knows what would have happened to them. I caught people under my deck at 3 o'clock in the morning. My German Shepherd, who never left my side, disappeared for 3 days. It went on and on and on. The morning after my 60 Minutes interview, I opened my front door, and there was a human skull, an animal skull, sitting on the front porch, facing me. And I thought for sure it was my cat. And people laughed because about Kathleen Willey's cats. Cats are just as important as dogs, and they are family members. And I am sick and tired of we have been belittled. Joy Behar has called us tramps. We've been called sluts. We've been called whores. We have been called every name under the sun. Look what they said about, James Carville said about Paula Jones about dragging a $100 bill through a trailer park. How low can you get? How low can you get? We demand, you are spending the taxpayers' money to cover up all of these sexual harassment cases by congressmen and maybe women also. And I have just one thing to say to all of you congressmen and all of you senators. We pay you. You owe us. You owe us answers. You owe us an explanation. How did that fund start? Who started it? Who got it going? Well, who's covering for? Why is everybody covering for these people? Why are they getting being allowed to get away with this horrible, horrible, horrendous treatment of women with no accountability whatsoever to anyone? We demand to hear those names, and not just next week, not next year, and not the year after that. You owe us an explanation for where that $17 million went, and we want that fund ended. How about compensating all of the women, with that money who have been treated so badly for all of these years, instead of covering for these monsters and these predators in Congress who have been doing this for how long now? Decades. They've been getting away with it for decades. And that's my challenge today. Like I said, we demand to know those names. I would like to see Bill and Hillary Clinton's pensions and perks stripped from them because of their behavior. They've got plenty of money that they've stolen from the Clinton Foundation. They won't go without. That's all I have to say. I hope that you will support us. I'm honored to be here and to support this project. And we are not going to stop until we get those names. We will not stop. You will not stop us. You will not terrorize any of us again. You will not threaten our pets, our children, like happened to me. It will not continue. So thank you for allowing me to speak. And like I said, it's an honor to be here with all of these people and all of these women. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. I just want to remind everybody, again, we heard the news today that Matt Lauer was fired on allegations of sexual harassment that apparently became known to NBC manager Andy Lack on Monday. It is now Wednesday. Charlie Rose's allegations were made public. Within a couple of days, he was gone. It looks like the media is doing a better job of policing the sexual harassers than our United States representatives. It is unacceptable that the Democrats have circled the wagons, and even Nancy Pelosi now apparently backtracking a little bit. But Al Franken said, "I'm sorry for what I can't remember." He never said, "I'm sorry" for what he actually did. He did not acknowledge it, only in partial ways. It is time for Al Franken to go. It is time for John Conyers to leave the stage. In fact, it is far past time for these sexual aggressors to leave. And that's all we want to leave you with today, except for to say thank you so much, and we'll take your questions. Penny.
We start with Breitbart News. How do you feel about the turnout today? It looks like not a lot of the press are here, and also I understand that your event, you got rejected to have this publicized. Do you know?
Yes, we went to the Press Web. I believe AJ is our publicist. It's called Press Web. And we, like other people who have a press conference to announce, which, as you know, and members of the media, you check and refer to that, they refused to take our money to announce our press conference today. And they refused to give us a reason. It was simply unacceptable, unbelievable, but it is obviously blatant media bias. And the turnout. I was hoping to see an NBC camera today. I thought it would be appropriate if an NBC cameraman and a reporter came today. But are any of you guys with NBC? ABC? CNN? CBS? PBS? Okay, I think you have the answer to your question, Penny. All right, next. Yeah.
Hi, I was wondering if anyone wanted to comment on the allegations against Roy Moore.
Yes, we certainly do. Blanquita?
Our position is this. First and foremost, we think that there's a question about the allegations, but we also believe, frankly, if the allegations are solid, the taxpayers, actually the voters, will be able to make a decision there. What we are looking at right now is what is going on in the Congress under the auspices of a fund that is hiding what has happened, what has been paid off against victims with taxpayer dollars. And the other thing I'd like to also make a recommendation, please, is that we demand that once we find out who they are, what happened, they need to reimburse the American people for the amount of money that we had to spend to cover up for them.
Yes. Ann Vandersteel, your Voice America. Cookie Roberts came forward and talked about the fact that, folks in her business, the media, have known about this practice by those in Congress of, taking advantage of women or trying to and feeling unsafe in the workplace for many, many years, yet they never came forward till recently. Why do you think that has been the case?
Brian?
Well, I mean, the environment that exists today, I think it's difficult for many people to deal with. And I also want to make one more point about Roy Moore, by the way, while we're here, because I think it's incredibly important to point out that Roy Moore is not yet an elected senator. And so to those who want to make that comparison, I would say, look, the people of Alabama are about to have an opportunity to decide whether he's worthy of the U.S. Senate or not. And if they choose not to, then he won't be there in the first place. To me, there's a clear distinction between someone who is already in elected office and who is not. And if Melanie wants to address the rest of
May I
Ann's question.
say one thing?
Sure.
On the issue of Cookie Roberts, You know, I've been in this town for a lot of years, for many years. There's so many years I'm starting to lie about it, okay? But Cokie Roberts, if she said she knew about it, why didn't Cokie Roberts talk about it? Why didn't she come out and talk about it? You know, come on. People knew about Matt Lauer for years. There were people that knew about Charlie Rose for years. And it's like people, you know, back in the day, even in things that happened in the Senate and the House before. You know why the press didn't say anything about it? Why they didn't expose these members? Because it wasn't convenient for them. They could get a little bit more advantage if they played by the clubhouse rules, okay? And so the same thing happened in the mainstream press. People that were friends with Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose, etc., they shut up.
Follow-up question. Do you think any of the ideology in terms of left-wing versus right-wing political ideologies played a part in the cover-up?
Maybe. But, you know, this is a town of power, okay? This is the ultimate town of power. In this town, when you go to a bar, they don't say, "What's your sign, baby?" They say, "Who do you work for?" Okay? And the fact of the matter is, you think of everybody that's trying to position to get close to people in the West Wing, trying to get people that are close to people in positions of committees, etc., it's really more about power. Abuse is about power. You know, I am so important that I can come up and I can fondle you and you won't talk because I'm so big I can hurt you. Well, what kind of obscenity is that? We've got to do better than that. We have an American standard, for crying out loud. We are judged by the quality of who we are in this country, and it starts in this town. We pay for these buggers, okay? They work for us. They have an accountability to us. Politics is not a darn spectator sport. Every single person in this room, every person that's in this country has a vested interest in cleaning up this town, and by God, it's going to start here.
Okay, yeah.
Andrew Craig from the Justice and Integrity Project. Two quick questions. One, in the Roger Stone, Rob Morrow book, Clinton's War on Women, I wonder if anyone disputes any part of that book. Both the authors are friends of mine, but I still would ask if there's any discrepancies anybody has. And my second question is your project doing anything on the Epstein plea bargain and that related case? Of course, he was a friend of the Clintons.
Yeah, you're referring to Jeffrey Epstein, who engaged the private airplane called the Lolita Express. Yes, we have not engaged further on that issue. We are specifically focused right now, today, on Al Franken and John Conyers in demanding that they resign immediately. We certainly will take a look at engaging in that a little bit further. Ladies, is there anything that you want to dispute, any inaccuracies? Okay, good. Anybody else? Yeah.
Is this the first time since the debate with President Trump, or candidate Trump at the time, that you guys have joined together to speak in public about this? Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, last night was the first time all of us actually had a chance to meet each other. And while some of you, like Juanita and Kathleen and Paula, who was, by the way, unable to join us today, although she sends her support and her warm regards, you guys have known each other for a very long time, but none of us had a chance to actually meet Leslie in person, correct? And we were so thrilled. We felt like at dinner last night, I have to really share this with you because I felt like this thing is cracking apart, that there might be a chance for our daughters, for our sons, for our children and our grandchildren to actually see a world in which appropriate behavior is the norm and not the exception. And that is what we are asking for today. I felt like with these ladies blazing the trail for us, who went before us and stood loud and proud, even when it was horrible and ugly and other women heaped scorn upon them, that now today in 2017, that we might be able to right that wrong for Juanita and Paula and Kathleen and Leslie and all the other women. In 1998, when Bill Clinton was coming to San Francisco, where I'm from, he went to a fundraiser in front of the Gordon Getty Mansion. I hoisted a sign along with 5,000 of my closest friends that said, "I believe you, Juanita, Kathleen, Paula," and I named all of the women in that sign. In 1998, that story became news, but it was quickly forgotten. History needs to be revisited, folks, because we are not going to allow this kind of behavior to continue. Go ahead.
You've criticized Nancy Pelosi.
Yes, we have.
And Barbara Comstock.
Yes.
But they're not the leaders in Congress.
Mitch
McConnell.
Yes.
Paul Ryan.
Yes.
Silence.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We have here in our hand invitations to Mitch McConnell and to Paul Ryan. We extended these invitations via fax, via email. We contacted their offices, and we have heard nothing from them. They are the leaders in the United States Senate and in the Congress, and they should have been here with us today, so shame on them. And as you know, many of us here are Republicans. So we have no problem in calling out our leadership when they do not do the right thing. Yes, Penny.
Do you think that if Hillary Clinton was elected president that we would be here today?
Yes.
I don't
The
think
press
that
conference,
would.
Kathleen says she wouldn't be here today.
And you wouldn't have had the New York Times article of, I believe, Juanita.
That
would never have happened.
Although I think that, I gotta say, again, you got some pretty strong women here, okay? And kind of fearless, because when things are bad and they're wrong, they're just wrong. And, I know you say you wouldn't have been here, but you stood up when it wasn't easy to stand up. And Melanie, I've known Melanie and I for years. She's been pretty fearless and strong about that because, again, if we don't speak out, who's going to speak out? If not now, when? And you're right to bring up the Speaker of the House. Thank you for that. So officially, on behalf of all of us, we'd like to ask the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the man who is in the most high leadership capacity in the People's House, to go to the taxpayers' funding of that slush fund and any other slush fund, whether there's $48,000 being paid off if someone is drunk and they're trying to pay off an employee. We want to know all the slush funds because it's all of our money. They work for us. They have an accountability to us. Can you imagine $17 million? Where did they take that fund? Who did they not send it to? You think about American military, about even the homeless. You can get any issue that's near and dear to your heart. $17 million. You know what they call that in D.C.? They call that chump change. You know why? Because we're the chumps.
I just want to address one more aspect of this that's come up, and I think it's my disappointment. The Media Equality Project is based out of the greater Boston area and the San Francisco Bay Area. And I would like to ask, in addition to the Republican leadership, where are the establishment conservative groups inside the Beltway? Why aren't they organizing an event like this? Why are we doing this? We flew here at our own expense to conduct this press conference today, and I think it really speaks to a gaping hole in the leadership of the conservative movement today, and we're trying to fill that hole with the Media Equality Project.
And condemn the Democrats, too, because these are the people who are enabling all of this behavior. Go ahead.
There's some similar allegations about Congressman Al Green of Texas. Are you familiar with those? Can you talk about them?
Yes, we're just becoming familiar with that. We haven't gotten engaged with that at this point, but we definitely will. I mean, it doesn't matter to us who you are. We will condemn you. We will ask for your resignation, and we will hope that you restore the dignity to your office if you're engaging in sexually inappropriate behavior, and especially if you're harassing women or your staff or anybody close to you who is not as powerful as you, like these women went through with Bill Clinton. All right, so I think we're about ready to wrap it up. I just want to say, in conclusion, I want to thank a couple of people, Sarah Griselli from the Media Equality Project and Jean Thomas, who runs our Facebook group. It's called Stop the Scalpings, where we have 109,000 committed activists who've been engaged in this issue and other issues. So thank you so much. And if you have any other questions of these ladies, feel free to ask them after we adjourn. Thanks.
Sexual harassment allegations continue to plague Senator Al Franken. Today, Melanie Morgan decided to confront Senator Grope himself, who she accused of harassing her 17 years ago. Morgan went to Franken's Capitol Hill office. She brought with her two women who accused Bill Clinton of sexual misconduct, groping, grabbing, and in one case, rape. Kathleen, Willey, Juanita Broaddrick. Not surprisingly, Senator Franken would not see them.
10 individuals. Are you going to evict us from his office? Oh, is he worried about a bunch of women now at this point in time? That's pretty amusing.
Well, no, it's just a place of business, so they have to be.
We had the people's business.
You do.
This is our business.
I'm just making sure there's no disorderly conduct or anything else.
No, we're not having any disorderly conduct.
So if you guys could just keep it down to some low professional business level, everything will be fine.
That's what we're doing.
That's all I'm asking.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Were you called to come to get us out? Was that when I saw you calling?
We were actually just down the hallway. And we saw the bags sitting out here, and we were just concerned about the bags. So.
Well, you can tell Al Franken hello from Melanie Morgan. He might not remember me, but I sure remember him very clearly. 17 years later. Sexual harassment.
Melanie, why don't you make an appointment to have a schedule for Mr. Franken to call you and to officially
That's an
apologize?
excellent. I needed an apology after all these years since he's refused to acknowledge anything that I've talked about publicly.
Sean Hannity soon. It would be nice to
Tonight, yes.
Mr.
I'll be calling for his resignation again tonight on national television, so that would be a very appropriate timing. Do you have a card? Maybe I can give you my phone number. Senator Al Franken. Here we go. Wait a minute. The last time I gave him my phone number, he called me for 3 days stalking me. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Give him your number.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
And just for the record, you all are part of the problem. This is why the women's sexual abuse
And we're not
continues
gonna give up.
over and over, because you'd rather cover for your high-paid jobs, cover for your senator, and then you call it a day. We're draining the swamp one sexual predator at a time. Have a great day.
We did reach out to Franken's office for a statement about what happened today. We haven't heard back. Joining us now from the media equalizer, Melanie Morgan, and two women who have accused President Clinton of sexual misconduct, Juanita Broaddrick, Kathleen Willey. Juanita, let me start with you. I remember when I interviewed you. I remember first Lisa Myers interviewed you first. I interviewed you second. And I took the time to interview all those women at the time. Jennifer Flowers has been vindicated now. We saw his conduct with Monica Lewinsky. So a lot of lying went on. And I remember Lisa Myers said something. She called you and said, the problem is you are too credible. I want you to explain the story and what the Clinton machine did to you.
You know, Sean, that was probably one of the hardest times of my life. I had absolutely spilled out my heart and soul in that interview. I had finally decided to do it with Lisa Myers and NBC. And it was supposed to have been broadcast 2 weeks after they filmed it. And it was about 2 weeks later, and Lisa calls. And she says, well, they're still doing more investigating. Mr. Lack wants to have more investigating done. And it was disappointing to me because I had just been gone through the ringer. Okay, so she said, well, there's a problem. There's good news and there's bad news. And I said, yes. And she said, the good news is you're credible. And I said, what's the bad news? And she said, you're very credible. Now, how do you take something like that? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it went on for another 5 weeks before they showed it, and showed it opposite the Grammys on a Friday night, I believe.
Let's talk about the things that were said, the attacks that were made against you by Clinton supporters and
oh yeah, that I was lying, that I had lied in my affidavit, that I was having an affair with another man, which was true. But my first marriage was over. They just hunted for anything that they could to try to bring me down. Of course I lied in my affidavit. I was scared to death of the Clinton machine.
30 years later.
Yeah.
We've had 30 years, though, of so many women that have gone through this. Kathleen, you're one of them. You went to the White House. You had known Clinton. You were a volunteer. And your story is he grabbed, fondled, touched, and kissed you against your will.
Yes, he did.
And what happened to you? What did the Clinton machine do to you?
They put me through 2 years of holy terror. They followed me. They terrorized me. There were people sneaking around my house at 3 o'clock in the morning. They killed 2 of my pets. They threatened my children 2 days before my deposition in the Paula Jones case. They told me I wasn't getting the message. They knew where my children lived and that everybody better be careful. I lived in fear and terror for 2 years.
Let me ask you.
I still look over my shoulder.
Melanie, I want to ask you, because we saw the picture of Franken and Leanne Tweeden asleep. I had an experience where Franken is nuts right here at the Fox studios. It's a different, not in the same way, not in the same vein, nothing, but unhinged is the only way I can describe him. You had that experience. You confronted him. I want you to address the what happened today and the 30 years of Clinton and their defenders and Democrats threading every needle up until and including last year's election, and now the position they're taking.
First of all, I want to say that I've had the opportunity to spend the last 24 hours with three of the bravest women I have ever met in my entire life, Kathleen, Willey, Juanita Broaddrick, and Leslie Millwee. And I consider it an honor to be able to invite them here to Washington, and they joined me on Capitol Hill, where we confronted at least the staffers of Senator Al Franken, who was cowering behind the door of his office because he refused to meet us. All these years later, it is so important, 30 years later, it is so important to revisit history if we're going to learn for our future generations, of our daughters and of our sons, of our grandchildren. If we don't learn from Bill Clinton and what he did to these poor women and the exercise of power and abuse of these women, how are we going to teach our sons how to behave appropriately?
You know, we
That's
keep
why
hearing
I'm
from
calling out,
Democrats.
Franken.
All of a sudden, Democrats, after the election from last year, the day of reckoning for the Clintons is coming. A little late, and it seems a little politically expedient because she's not running.
No, and you know what? I just want to say that Congressman Conyers, Captain Underpants, as I refer to him, and Al Frankengroper, they need to go. And that's what we have to say to all of America. And I would like to ask all of your listeners, if I could, Sean, to put some pressure on the majority and minority leaders in both houses of Congress to ask these two men to resign. They're clinging to power. I understand that Conyers has left the District of Columbia. He's flown back on coach, by the way, to Michigan, to his home state. But Al Franken seems to think that if he just waits this storm out, that it'll all pass. But we haven't forgotten. I will not forget. Kathleen won't forget. All of these women. We have to stop sexual harassment now, and we have to hold all people in Congress accountable for their power.
And stop using our money to pay off their deals with people. All right, last question, Juanita and Kathleen. It's 30 years of you basically have been abused and not believed. Now liberals have changed their tune. What message do you have to them, Juanita, and then Kathleen?
You know, the message that I have is it's a little late. You know, I would like to have had that belief many years ago. And I don't believe we would be getting it now where the Clintons not on their way down. It's hard to believe that they truly mean what they're saying.
Well said. Kathleen?
I believe it's the same thing that Juanita does, a little too late. And I think their apologies that we've heard so far are empty apologies. The only reason that they made them is because they were caught. And like Melanie said, I hope that everyone in this country will call their congressmen and their senators and demand to know the names of the people on the list that our $17 million paid for their sexual harassment cases, and remind them.
Let it come out of their pocket. I agree
well,
with you.
we pay them. We pay them, and they owe us answers.
Absolutely. All right. I know it's hard for you guys to go back to this. We really appreciate you being with us. Thank you all.
Thanks so
Sean.
much, Sean.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.